Hello and welcome to this lesson. My name is Luis and I will be giving a lesson about taking exams. I am from Live Life English, and if you have ever been told if you need to do a TOEFL exam, IELTS or TOEIC, or are you in the middle of preparing for one of these exams or other English proficiency exam? If so, watch this lesson because I think it can really help you. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over some of the very important questions that you need to ask in yourself in order to prepare very well and very effectively for this exam. And it's about much more than just studying English, okay? So I'm going to cover different areas. First, the basics that you need to know about the test, the logistics or the planning that you have to do in order to be very successful, the progress, how to measure it, how to tell, how to actually make progress to reach your goal, and also what else can you do to really achieve great success. And that is a lot more than just doing English or just studying English or improving your English. Now, a lot of this knowledge has come to me because besides being a trainer and an English teacher, I also have an online uh, class, and I have a lot of students who ask me that they need, or they tell me that they need to do the IELTS or the TOEFL, or that need to do an exam and they weren't sure which one. Their friends tell them to do this, and another friend tells them to do the other one, and they were really confused and they didn't know what they had to think about. And so through the years, I've developed a lot of experience in advising and counseling students to prepare very well for this task, which is not an easy task, but it's also a really important task because these exams matter a lot to your life, okay? So let's get started. Let's start with the basics. Number one, which exam do you need to do? Now, sometimes you have a choice and sometimes you don't have a choice. But if you do have a choice, please check because there are so many different exams, the IELTS, the TOEFL, the TOEIC, and so many others today. And sometimes students have heard of, let's say, the IELTS, but they haven't heard of other exams. But perhaps this is one of the options, and that's an important, very important question for you to answer. I remember once I had a student, he was preparing for the IELTS, and he was having a tough time with it. He didn't do really well because he was starting at a lower level. And so later it came out that he could have actually prepared for the TOEIC exam, which is much easier. And so I told him, why don't you just switch to that exam? And then he passed right away because that's where he was and he had a limited amount of time to prepare. So it is really important to check what are the possible exams you could do to satisfy the requirements of your university or your professional certification body or whatever reason it is that you're doing this exam, okay? So make sure you know that. Now, the second point then becomes, let's suppose that you have to do the IELTS exam. So the IELTS, for example, has different versions. It has an academic version and a general version. Usually the academic one is if you're trying to get into a university because they need you to have higher level English. And the general one is, for example, immigration to a country or to get a better position in your job. So don't waste time studying for the wrong exam because each one is quite different. Okay, now that was that. Now, which area does your exam cover? For example, with IELTS academic, obviously it's going to be more academic subjects. It's general, what kind of topics do they have there? If it's the TOEIC exam, that area is going to be more about business because TOEIC covers business English, not really general English. And if it's the TOEFL, it's more also academic English, okay? So you also have to find out what area your exam focuses on so you can learn the right vocabulary and all the other associated study. What date do you need to take your exam? Now, to figure that out, you kind of have to work backwards and find out why are you doing this exam. If you're trying to get into university in September, for example, in North America, then admissions required dates might end into summer, June, or September, something like that. So there's deadlines. So you need to do your exam maybe a little bit before then. You have to find out how long it takes for the testing body like IELTS or TOEFL, to get your exam results to the university. You have to allow time for all that. And of course, you have to allow time for you to prepare for the exam. So work it backwards from whatever your goal is, and that will help you to determine when you need to start studying or how much time you need to keep in order to prepare and complete this exam. Okay, so now you almost need to look into, if you have a choice of exams, you might want to check and think about how those exams are tested. For example, the IELTS, for the speaking test, part of the test, you have to talk to a live examiner. Are you the kind of person who feels comfortable with a real person? Do you speak better English as a result of speaking with a real person, or do you feel more nervous, intimidated when you're talking with a live examiner? Well, if you feel more nervous, then, and if you do have a choice, then maybe you should do the TOEFL exam, because in the TOEFL, you don't need a live examiner. You just have the exam on the computer. And so maybe that's easier for you. In the IELTS, for example, you have to write the answer in the essay section, but in the TOEFL, you type everything. So you need to know how it's tested, because maybe you are better at writing by hand or typing on the computer, and all of these things do make a difference, because finally you have a limited amount of time which to show how well you know English. Okay, so all of these little points become big points. Now, what skills are covered? So you need to find out in that particular exam that you are thinking about, what are the different skills that they cover. So they ask about what sections are in the exam. Now, usually the most common ones are reading, writing, listening, and speaking. There are 4 skills, but not only that, find out in advance what you need to do. Maybe the reason you are giving this exam is because they want you to do a writing, they need a writing or speaking score. Maybe they just need reading or speaking score. So only exam only tests that. So make sure you check that. And another very important piece of advice, if you're working with a budget, okay, and most people are working with budgets, certain limited amount of money that they can put towards this purpose, then for example, reading and listening, I recommend you can study by yourself, okay? Of course, if you can study for the whole thing with someone, with a teacher, or in a classroom, that's fine and that's better. But if your funds are limited, you don't have enough money, maybe you can just do the reading and listening by yourself, study it by yourself, get the right books, and go through the books. But the 2 sections I don't recommend to study by yourself are the speaking and writing, because with speaking and writing, you need the feedback from the teacher. Even if you write an essay every day for a year, but nobody checks it and gives you feedback, you might not get any better. And the same with the speaking. Experienced teachers know what your mistakes are and can find your mistakes and can guide you out of those mistakes, okay, and put you on the right track. So make sure you get a teacher for these 2 sections. What content is involved or are included in your exam? Does it talk about business? Does it talk about academic, about the environment, history? Find out in advance if perhaps you need to start already studying that vocabulary. If your vocabulary on the environment is very limited, then you can start working on that already. So check what kind of subject areas and topics are going to be talked about in your particular exam. So the last thing here is, how long is the exam? Think about that. Some exams are shorter than others. The IELTS are shorter in length of time. The TOEFL is longer for whatever reason, physical reasons or health reasons. Do you have any issues with that? Is it very hard for you to stay there for 3.5 hours compared to something that's shorter? Maybe that's a factor. So that's if you can choose. Okay, these are the questions you should be asking yourself. Now let's move on to the logistics. Before we start the second section about logistics or planning, I want to mention, of course, I'm giving you a lot of questions, but I'm also going to answer some of these questions later by giving you the names of various resources that you can trust and that you can turn to help you answer some of these questions, okay? Okay, so let's go to the logistics, or how are you going to plan for your exam, okay? So number 9, how much money or what is your budget or for this exercise, for this goal of passing your exam? So when you're considering how much money it's going to cost you, how much the exam cost. Some of these exams cost hundreds of dollars, or whatever it is in your currency, and that's an important factor for you, or maybe it's not. You have to consider how much it will cost you to do the training. How if you decide to train online, or you're going to go to school or hire a private teacher, if you're going to study by yourself, or whatever you're going to do. How much it's going to cost you for the materials. Can you get them from somewhere? Are they available online? Do you have to buy them? How many books do you need to buy? Which books? And all that kind of stuff you need to check. So how much money are you going to be required for these various purposes? Because you want to make sure that you plan sensibly when it comes to the money part. Secondly, how much time do you have for this to achieve this goal? Perhaps you're working, perhaps you have a family, maybe you have a part-time job, maybe you're in the university, maybe you're juggling with different responsibilities in your life besides this new one that you have to pass an English proficiency exam. So that will also affect how much time you have available to study. And it's important to be realistic with time commitment, so you can make a plan that you can follow, a plan to study that you can follow, and not go crazy in the end. This is not an exam of knowledge. This is an exam of language. So you need to build up your skills, right? You cannot cram at the end. It will help you only a little bit, but you really have to try to do everything you can to step by step each day so that you can do well, okay? Now, how are you going to prepare for this exam? Are you going to prepare by yourself, as I mentioned earlier? What about friends who are also planning to do this exam? Do you have a group of friends who you can study together? Are you going to hire a private teacher to help you? Are you going to go to a school or an online teacher maybe? Today there's a lot of possibilities, and I can offer you that. Maybe you're in another place, you don't have access to good teachers. You can find somebody very experienced online, and that's something to consider. Are you going to join a school? Exam preparation class, maybe you can do that, but not everybody is good, so you have to try to judge that. And also, as I said, online there are lots of possibilities. Number 12, what materials will you need to prepare for this exam? Are you going to buy the book? Do you live in a country or in the city or a place where they have a library, for example? In Los Angeles, they have a lot of places you can rent books. So if you're here in LA, you can rent a lot of books to prepare for the exam, but that's not the case everywhere. So you have to check that. Do you have friends who have completed the exams? Maybe you can borrow these books from them. And if you're not sure which books to buy, I'll tell you later how you can know that. But one of the things you could do locally, if you're not sure, is to ask the school, okay? Ask a school if they have a exam preparation course. Even if they don't have one, you can just call them and ask them if they have materials for sale. Ask them if they have any required textbooks for that part of that exam preparation course, and that way you can get a reference to 1 or 2 or 3 very good texts that can help you prepare for this exam. Okay. Later I will tell you websites that will help you to know some of the better materials that you can use to prepare for the IELTS or the TOEFL or the TOEIC. Okay, let's continue. So now let's look at some of the questions you need to ask yourself to make good progress in your exam preparation. Number 13, what level are you at now when you're starting or along the way? How do you know that? The only way you know that is by actually taking a sample test. I don't mean one that you pay for. I mean from a book or from software or online. There are sample tests available which represent that exam. Now, so the IELTS actually has a book which has their previous exams. So, for example, you can do that, and then you would know exactly. So, all right, if I do this exam today, this is my score. Or I mean, you can judge everything. You can't judge the writing, but the other sections, okay? So you must know where you are because that will determine either which materials you choose to start studying from or which class you join, because all of these exams have material that start at kind of a lower level and then intermediate level and then an advanced level. And eventually you want to be able to do the most advanced preparation before you go for your exam. Okay? Next, what questions, while you're preparing, what kind of question do you usually get wrong? Try to keep a track of that because otherwise you just keep studying everything. You'll go round and round and you'll get a little bit frustrated. The way to break through is to identify exactly what your mistakes are. Do you always get the true and false questions wrong? Okay, so if you do, then maybe you need to understand about that type of question. And maybe you always get multiple choices right, so you're okay there. Maybe you get fill in the blank right, so that's not your issue. Identify which are your issues. And it's not the same as your friend, and it's not the same as anybody else. Okay, so always keep track of your mistakes. Your mistakes are wonderful. They are like the doors to your success. And by identifying what they are, you will be able to get a much higher score. Okay? Next. What, what schedule are you going to follow in order to prepare for this exam? What are you going to do on a daily basis? What are you going to do on a weekly basis? What are you going to do on a monthly basis? So you're asking yourself, maybe, do I have to do something every day? Well, yes, there are little things that you can do every day. You could learn a word a day. You could learn an idiom a day or more. You could write an essay every day if you have that time. If you're very weak at writing, perhaps that's what you need to do. And the earlier you start, the more days you will have, okay? What could you do weekly? Well, in online every week on Fridays they have a practice test. So because they studied all through the week, and they check if they did any better. If not, why? Where are your weak points? Where are your their strong points? That way, people focus on what they really need to improve, and don't just keep going around in circles. Okay. And monthly, what are you going to do on a monthly basis? If you have a few months, take a broader view. Look at what's happening everywhere. Look at the 4 different areas: reading, writing, listening, speaking. Which are your weakest? Where do you need to put more focus on? That kind of thing. Get the big picture. Okay? What corrections? Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, mistakes are so important, but they will only help you if you keep track of them. Make sure you have an error log, a sort of a list of your mistakes that could be in grammar, it could be in vocabulary, spelling, or pronunciation, so that you will know eventually how to solve them, and eventually they will go away. Okay? Even though there are usually 4 skills that are tested in these English proficiency exams: reading, writing, listening, speaking. Sometimes students don't realize that other skills are also being tested. So I'm just going to mention some of those to you. They include skimming. Skimming means reading fast. Because it's in the reading section, you really don't have too much time. You have to learn how to read very quickly. Scanning, which is also reading quickly but looking for specific information for an answer, for example. Paraphrasing, when you're writing, you can't copy the words that are in the question, but you can write them in your own words. That's called paraphrasing. Grammar, a lot of the exams today don't have a formal section of the grammar, but grammar is tested indirectly in your essay, in your speaking. So grammar is important too. Vocabulary, of course, will be tested indirectly or sometimes directly in the reading section, in the listening section, and also when you speak and write. Capitalization. is important when you're writing. Punctuation is important when you're writing. Spelling, of course. In the IELTS exam, for example, even in the listening section, if you make a spelling error, you'll get the answer wrong. I know it's tough. It's not easy. Even if you heard the right word and you put the right word, but you made one little spelling error, you'll get it wrong. So spelling can matter a lot. And of course, pronunciation. Do you have any serious pronunciation problems that need to be corrected so that your speaking score can be higher? These are some of the many questions that you want to ask yourself. And as I said, I'm going to give you some resources that will help you to answer some of these questions soon, okay? Keep watching. Okay, so now we talk about how you're going to achieve success, amazing success. And it's about doing much more than only improving your English. Here are some of the important questions you can ask yourself to get outstanding success. Okay, here we go. So, 18, what academic resources should you consult while you're preparing for one of these exams? Well, the most important thing I want to tell you is to make sure that you're consulting authentic, trustworthy sites if you're looking online. Now, for example, and you can have native English speaking teachers, and they need to have a lot of experience teaching in front of the classroom, teaching thousands of students to pass these exams. There's also websites that you can have many lessons, and a lot of them are about passing the IELTS, the TOEFL, improving writing, listening, speaking, and pronunciation. And this advice is also coming from many other teachers who have been there. We actually teachers who have helped thousands of students to pass these exams. So this advice is not just from knowledge, but also from experience, to helping students to get the highest grades possible. Make sure you're watching the right teachers with the right accents and with the right English. Okay, that's very important. Not saying only because of me, but because it's really important for you. Also, go to the actual sites of these exams, the official websites of the exams. Don't forget to go to them. There's so much information available that sometimes students forget to read what the people who actually made these exams have to say. But it's important, so don't forget to visit the actual websites of IELTS, TOEFL, or TOEIC, or whichever other exam you're planning to take. And very often you will also find there lots of material which is useful, lots of sample questions, model tests, and things like that. So do that. In addition, I want to recommend to you that there's a study guide for the IELTS and for the TOEFL. It's called, and you can go to Good Luck IELTS, or Good Luck TOEFL, or Good Luck TOEIC. And this site gives you a lot of information and tips on how you can do your best on these exams. There's model essays there, sample questions, and so on and so forth. So this is a good site. So again, Good Luck IELTS, or Good Luck TOEFL, or Good Luck TOEIC. Besides the academic preparation, there's a lot more that we need to do as human beings when we get into a challenging situation as the exam. We need to prepare ourselves mentally. We need to prepare ourselves physically and emotionally. So here are some other. There's another website that's called goodluckexams.com, and that tackles these issues. These issues here. How you can do well besides just studying English. For example, mentally preparing yourself. What kind of study skills do you need? How can you improve your study skills? Where do you study? When do you study? How do you study? These are some of the questions that the site talks about. Memory techniques. How do you remember things? Are you using memory techniques? There's many memory techniques that makes you feel like a genius. But if you don't learn them, you won't use them. So also the learning styles. What is your learning style? Is there an easier way for you to learn? You should know that. You should know that information by now. Specifically, so for that, for the learning styles, today some of the experts think that learning styles are not important, and other people don't agree. And many schools do teach learning styles. Um, and there's other websites where you can see that, or there's a little quiz that you can do online, and you can, and then that site will give you some advice on what your learning styles are. So physically, you can prepare. You can prepare physically. Do you think that what you eat in the morning probably makes a difference to how well you can do on a test? Well, I hope you're saying yes because it really does. We are physical bodies, not only brains, not only minds. So our brains are fueled by what we put in our bodies. So on this site, there's also sections about what you can eat before your exam, nutrition tips, exercise, brain gyms, and things like that. So all these things are important to help keep your brain sharp. Another thing that you can do is exercises and reduce negatives. If you have test anxiety, you should try to reduce that. Use relaxation exercises. Also increase positives, which means you need to have motivation, inspiration, and affirmation. So all of these things are more in detail. I can give you a lot of more information in detail if you go to my website or you contact me directly. On my website is live live English dot weebly dot com. Okay, so you can contact me directly there so you can get more advice from me, and I can give you more information on the online courses that I offer. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Again, my name is Luis. LiveLiveEnglish.com. Thank you so much.